All right. I think it's recording now.
Okay, we are. So, hello. Thank you very much, Armin, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, people. Is for me it's night. For you, it's morning. Very far distance, time distance. Armin Navabi tonight. People, founder of Atheist Republic, author of Why There Is No God, and co-host of the Secular Jihadists. Can you tell us a little bit about all this story and all this
Oh.
career? How did you become an atheist?
Oh wow. Okay. We're going that far back. I don't know how much detail do you want? How much detail do you want me to get into?
Well, I believe you came from kind of like a place or had some
It's
close contact
yeah.
with the religious oppression. So I think that's probably what
All right.
drove
So
you
okay,
first
let's
time.
go with that. Okay.
Yeah,
So I was
we
born in Iran. Most people I think know that Iran is a religious country. It's a theocratic country. However, my upbringing was very liberal because my family, and our social environment was very liberal, very secular, very anti-mullah. My school environment was more religious than my home environment, right? You're exposed with two different ideologies. By the way, I hear myself a little bit. There's an echo. Uh, you're exposed to two different ideas. So from the very beginning, you're exposed. You two different ideologies come at you, and you start noticing that what you learn in school is about how the world is supposed to be is very different from what you learn in home, right? And you have to pick a side, right? And most in my social gathering, at least, most kids um, took the side of their parents against like religious oppression. Again, when I say that, is not most kids consider. If you ask them, "Are you Muslim?" they would say, "Yes, they're Muslim," right? But they hated the mullahs. They never prayed. They never fasted. They had girlfriends. And they would when they get older, they start drinking alcohol. They would never see inside of a mosque unless they were forced to in school for an event, or if it was someone's funeral, or if it was someone's wedding. So those are the mostly the people that I was around. And for me, though, again, everybody studies religion because it's a requirement. It's one of the topics in school, right? And you start studying religion. But for most of my classmates, studying Islam was just about passing exams, right? It wasn't really about like nobody took it seriously. Nobody thought this is. And one thing I think had a huge impact, at least on me, at the beginning, and other kids, and this is just a guess, but I think like some elements that made us not really much like Islam that much, or at least not like public displays of Islam that much, is like every day that we go to school for 12 years, you're standing outside in lines. Every grade, like grade one has one line, grade two has one line, grade three has one line, and we have to wait for like I don't know 10 or 15 minutes before we go to class. And it's either really really cold or really really hot, right? Unless it's spring or autumn, fall. But in summer and winter, you're waiting to go to class, and they have to read the Quran, and they're reading it in Arabic. And Iranians don't speak Arabic, most of them, like the vast majority of them speak Persian. And even when we study Arabic, again, we don't study Arabic to learn how to speak Arabic. We learn Arabic just to pass Arabic exams. Even though, like, we studied Arabic for how many years? 4 years, I think, if I remember correctly. And I can't like I aced every single, well, not every single, but I aced all my Arabic, most of my Arabic exams, and I can still don't I can't speak Arabic. Like we just learn how to pass the exams, right? But anyway, so we have to listen to somebody, some kid who had a good voice to come read the Quran, and you can't go to class until they finish. So you just learn like, oh my God, get it over with, right? Like another thing I remember is like the azan, the call to prayer in the morning, right? If you're unlucky enough to have like a mosque close to where you live, you know how annoying it is, especially if you don't do, the morning prayer yourself, that you just want to sleep and there's this loud speaker close to your home just every goddamn morning, just doing the azan, right? So it's annoying. And also, I remember as a kid, when you were watching cartoon, the cartoon is just like the time of the cartoon is like in the afternoon. I think it was 4 or 5. I don't remember, but it was the time that we had. It was close to the sunset, and usually um, when the call to prayer for the afternoon is at sunset, right? So you're watching the cartoon, and right in the middle of it, like the cartoon is when the time that you're not doing your homework, because as soon as you come home from school, you're supposed to start doing your homework, and your parents start making you do your homework. But they give you a break when there's cartoon time, right? So in the afternoon, you go watch cartoons, and that's your break. But the azan cuts in the middle of the cartoons, right? So you're watching it, and it just cuts, and it starts doing the call to prayer, and you're like, oh god damn it, like we're having so much fun, and now you have to go back to do your homework, right? So you just learn to get frustrated, and then that's just childhood. Once you grow older and you become a teenager, you learn that a lot of the things that teenagers want to do is un-Islamic, right? You want to go to a park, you want to hold a girl's hand, you want to like have a relationship, you want to listen to music. A lot of the movies are either illegal or like they're so much censored that the plot is completely gone. So you learn how to watch stuff that teenagers are not supposed to watch on the internet. You figure out how to do it, and those are the skills that you eventually. So one very one thing that a government, most religious governments do, that really comes and bites them in the ass eventually, is that they make porn illegal. Okay, and they filter porn sites, right? And no government can get in between teenage boys and their porn, okay? Because they will find a way to get to it. And by trying to stop them, what you are doing is that you're making them learn how to go around government filters, how to become more tech savvy. So when they get older and they're now interested in political activism, right? And you don't want them to get some other information. They have years of experience on how to get information that they're not supposed to get on the internet, right? So you basically train them by making porn illegal, right? So that's something that. What, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, what's interesting that you brought up this, and I was like was so natural, and I was like, oh, that is just so funny that all the conversations end up in this channel with talking about sex, porn, or fapping. Because and I have to bring this up because it was just so spontaneous. And people will think that like I asked you to talk about pornography here.
No,
The
but this
first
is
video that was viral in this channel, and actually is none of my interviews. It's a
right.
video of me talking to the camera, talking against the myths on the no-fap movement.
Mm.
And I have passed 45,000 views in this channel, and probably like 3,000 hate comments. It's
Right.
very disliked because people don't understand that I was talking against the myths and not against the movement itself. Even if there is some people to get some benefit of the abstinence of masturbation, they still need to go to the proper treatment, doctors, and therapeutics and
Mm.
multidisciplinary team, and not just follow internet movements. So anyways, it was interesting that you talked about this, and it's all about pseudoscience and a lot of discussion on free speech and in individual freedom and rights as well. So it's a lot.
Well,
It's
the reason
interesting.
why that comes up a lot is because in very religious environments, that's the first time kids start noticing how much religion influenced their lives, right? Because up until you discover that you're a sexual animal, you feel like, okay, fine, this is annoying. I can get away. It's fine. It's a little bit of an inconvenience in
Yeah,
your life,
most
right?
of people, thinking of the bell curve, we understand that most of people will behave like cows. They are like, I don't like what's going on, but kind of walk with,
Yes, yes.
with the
But
herd.
yeah.
And we have like those atheists like us that come out and kind of like poop everything, or want to destroy their hierarchy, their organization, or their whatever they
Right.
feel like it's good, that it's an order, but it's not for the good purposes. And that's why we come with the philosophical thinking. It's like for example, what I see is like people is what you actually explained. In sometimes I try to portray this to people in Brazil as well. It's like most of people are atheists in the doctrine itself. Like you said, they are not really following. They are reading the Bible. They are not even thinking of what they are reading. They are not rationalizing about that, reasoning about that, or and that itself is being an atheist.
Mm,
But until you actually take the thought and it's like, no, I don't need those things. I don't need to fake I'm following those rules. I don't need to fake I'm reading this Bible and actually learning something from this. It doesn't matter which religious Bible, which holy book you using. You don't need any holy book to show you morals. You don't need a superior being, a super powerful God, imaginary friend to tell you it's bad to kill other people, to steal other people's stuff.
right.
You know,
Yeah.
and I actually had more problems because in Brazil they are very into like, oh no, this is just a fun school. You going to this the evangelization, the indoctrination. And it's like, of course, there is the fun part of like, I'm just going with my friends. And I did that for 12 years, of my life. I would go to the Bible school and I was like, this is a pain, but I want to go to roller skating with my friends after. So I'll go through it. But
Right.
I was like, this is just so much bullshit. I was all the time just sitting there thinking like, this makes no sense and I want to get out of there. But since everybody around you is doing the same thing, you really feel like you have nobody else. Who are you going to hang out if you do not go to church?
Mm,
There's no other party going on in the city, in a
right.
small city. So there is a lot of more the oppression that we don't actually see from the religious side, that it is the social oppression, and not just the sexual one. But yeah, like you said, I do believe the kids feel that thing more later. Like most of people
Well, for
will feel
boys,
that
I
way.
think it's a little bit later. I think in Iran, again, I'm talking about mostly about Iran, because for boys, you just start noticing how much religion actually wants to control your personal life. Once you start noticing that you're a sexual animal, and but all of a sudden, you notice that there's a huge force outside of your personal life that has a lot of say and wants to have a lot of influence about what you get to do and what you don't get to do. So you start noticing that huge power, influence, force over you at around those ages. I think for girls in Iran, they notice it a little bit earlier when they start going to
All the time.
school. Yeah, because when they start going to school, like before they go to school, they don't wear unless they're in a very religious family. They're not wearing the hijab, so they're running around. They have their hairs open. They're just being kids, and all of a sudden, they notice that like at age 7. I mean, you know, 6 or 7. All of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, I'm supposed to dress like mommy now. I'm supposed to cover my hair and all that, right?" And they notice that boys don't have to do this. They notice that they have to do this, and some people give, like in school, they give them explanations and whatnot. So they just noticed that, okay, there's this, you know, I'm supposed to behave in certain ways because I don't know why, right? So they just noticed that pressure on them. I think a lot earlier than the boys, right? Um, and that's why actually in Iran right now, a lot of the resistance movements are led by women. and they have a high percentage of women activists in Iran. I think because there are a lot. I mean, even after the Islamic Revolution, the first major anti-government protests was hundreds of thousands of women showing up in the streets, and because we look at the pictures, it's just all women protesting against the Islamic Republic and against the mandatory hijab. And we were never told that when we were kids. We didn't see that as part of our history. I know I found that about our history once I left Iran because it was like erased, right? But I mean, when I was watching the videos many years like after I left Iran, I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Where this happened?" And I was watching the videos on YouTube, like really old videos, and the chance of these women, some of them like we didn't do the revolution to go back in history. It was amazing. Anyway, so that's the
It
environment that I
is,
was.
it is very, but it is a great discussion because we have all the third wave feminists online talking about mythical boogeyman, evil thing on the Western society, when we actually do need feminism is still in theocratic places. And
We
like
do have
what
them,
is
yeah.
like you guys always talk about this, and it's like I think the idea of like there are more women activists on those places because there is the need. They
Mm.
are still being subjugated, and they still being oppressed and considered not even humans. So or maybe no, yeah, they have to be considered human beings but not humans yet, I think. is that
No,
is that what was the last
no,
one
they
of
are
the last?
no. That was a very rare like the no. They are considered human mostly. Well, humans with less rights.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So that was a. I remember. I know what you're referring to, but that's not a common belief. They are Women are considered human, but they
Humans
don't.
with just a little bit less rights. Okay, yeah.
Right.
So yeah,
Af-
feminists all around the world, please go burn burqas, bras, or whatever in the Middle East. Is where we need you guys. you know. So yeah, a lot going on. Um, about your book, how did it come around? When was the time where you became so strong atheist, or you had so many like people coming to you and saying, "Why an atheist talking about religious or about God if you don't even
right.
believe in it?" Made you write the whole book?
Well, so that's what I was getting at. So when I was still in Iran, one thing that I noticed I was different from my classmates is when they told us in school, for example, that there's a heaven and there's a hell, and in hell you're gonna go and the angels are gonna pour lava down your throat, and angels are gonna come smash your face and stuff like that. And other kids were like, okay, like, let's take notes so they could pass the exam. I was like, what the fuck, right? Like, I was like, why is nobody scared of this, right? I couldn't understand why other kids and other people were not were not terrified about the possibility of this happening to them, right?
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid even crying about it at some point, worrying about maybe I'm gonna burn in hell. I remember actually lighting a match and putting it on my arm just to see how much it hurts to burn, right? And then I try to imagine that all over my body, and then I try to imagine that all over my body for like 10 minutes, for 1 year, for 1,000 years, for 100,000 years. I was like, there's no way anybody could like what? How could this be? And I ask people like, aren't you worried to go to hell? And people were like, no, I'm not worried. I think God is merciful and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, have you read his book? Because the life that you're living is you're going to end up in hell, right? I looked at my parents. My dad drank alcohol. My mom, they never prayed. And I was like, my parents are going to burn in hell. And I was just like, I remember like asking even my private math teacher, like who makes fun of like Islam and stuff. I was like, "Aren't you worried about going to hell?" Like, Oh, he said like, oh, I don't think that God that created the universe cares about what I do in my bedroom or what I put in my mouth, right? I was like, well, not according to his book. Like, why is everybody like so sure about what God? Like, if they're so sure about everybody going to heaven, like, aren't you? Like, tell people like, if I tell you that there's a chance that a year from now, there's going to be 4 people showing up at your door and beating the crap out of you for about an hour, unless you finish these 10 tasks in the next year, you're going to be terrified. You're going to be like, "Oh my god, I have to make sure." Even if there's a small chance, you're going to try to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. You're going to take all measures possible. But we are told in school and everywhere else, and people say, "Yeah, I believe it," but they don't like that. There's a chance that you're going to be tortured. You're going to be screaming in pain for thousands of years, and a lot of us for eternity. And people seem to be worried about like their careers, about their car, or if about the party next weekend, or about what they're going to be eating at the picnic that they're planning for, I don't know, whatever. And like, but nobody seems to be worried about burning for eternity. And I couldn't get that. I didn't understand how is that possible. Um, and I said like, okay, I'm going to become a very, very serious Muslim, right? When I hit the age of reason. And again, so this is the thing that you have to what we were told in our school, and again, this is different for other Muslims, but what we were told in our school is that age of wisdom for girls is 9 and for boys is 15, right? So that means that there is no sin before the age of wisdom. Again, other Islamic sects also have age of wisdom, but it's not as clearly as defined as it was for us. Like 15 for boys, 9 for girls, right? So that means that whatever the hell I do before age 15 will not be counted as a sin. I'm like pure, sinless. It's not like Christianity where you're born with sin. No, you're pure without any good deeds or bad deeds before age 15, right? You have 2 angels. One of them is like on your shoulders. One of them is writing your good deeds, and the other one is writing all your sins. But apparently before age 15, for me, because I'm a boy, my sheets are white as snow, right? They start writing, recording after 15. So what does that mean? What that means that I thought like, okay, that means that if you die before the age of wisdom, you have no sin. Where do you go if you die with no sin? You can't go to hell, so you must go to heaven. Suicide is a sin in Islam, but there's no sin before age 15, right? So suicide before age 15 can't be a sin. So I thought, like, why don't I just kill myself just to make sure I don't go to hell? I went and checked with my religion teacher, like, listen, why don't I just kill myself and make sure I go to heaven? And he said, well, because if you go to heaven just because you died as a child, you're just gonna go to the shittiest part of heaven. You're gonna go to the lowest part of heaven. Like, why don't you just be a good Muslim and you earn heaven and you get the better part of heaven, right? So apparently, children that die too early, they just go to the lowest part of heaven. The highest part of heaven is for martyrs, right? That's where Muhammad is. So if you die as a martyr, you go there. You go with Muhammad, right? I thought to myself, I don't give a fuck which part of heaven I go to. I just don't want to go to hell. Okay? If you could guarantee a parking lot for eternity for me, I'll take that as long as I can be sure that there's no burning involved, right? Honestly, I was like, this is so unfair. Like, you asked me to, like, I've been put into this game that I have to win. Nobody checked with me if I want to play this game. Like, the consequences of losing the game is so high, the penalty is so high, and I have to win. Like, I'm not gonna risk it. What? Yeah, I might be a good Muslim. I might not. Like, why would I? It seems like the dumbest gamble of all time. I'm gonna check out early. I'm just gonna make sure that I'm not gonna take the risk, right? I found a get out of jail free card, so I jumped out of the window in my school. I jumped out of my window to make sure I don't burn in hell. I broke both my legs. I broke my left arm. I fractured my back. I was in a wheelchair and my bed for like 7 months. I missed 1 year of school. And the only reason why I didn't try it again was because I saw what it did to my parents, right? Because I saw my dad cry for the first time. I saw my mom just come into the hospital and just collapse on the ground in shock. I saw them get so depressed because I didn't tell them why I did it, so they thought there was something wrong with them. They were blaming themselves. It was devastating to them. So I didn't try it again um, until I hit age 15, and I was like, "Fuck! Now I have to be a good Muslim." And because I missed 1 year of school. When I went back to school, the kids in my class were completely new. And eventually, when I became religious, most of my classmates were not religious, so I was like the odd kid that was like praying all the time, and like they were like, "Oh, this fucking religious kid is." So and also because the other kids were not my classmates that I was in class with every year, these kids, I became a loner, right? And being a
You were
loner,
always the black sheep.
yeah, but because I didn't have friends, my connection with God and religion became also stronger, right? Um, but still, the idea of hell was always still a problem to me because even though if I was gonna go to heaven, if I was took Islam seriously, my parents were gonna go to hell, and I couldn't understand. My dad was like really good man, like he's a doctor, and I tried to like argue with my teacher. I was like, listen, my dad, when some people come to him, and they do surgery, he does surgery on them, and then after the surgery, not before the surgery, they tell him that they can't afford it, and my dad is like, it's okay, you don't have to pay. Like every time they tell him they can't pay, my dad just forgive them, right? And like this is what the kind of person my dad is, but he doesn't pray. Is he gonna go to hell? And my teacher was like, yeah, of course. I'm like, what? It doesn't make sense. So, and then I thought like all the Christians, they're gonna go to hell. All the Jews, all the Hindus, like most of the planet is gonna go to hell. So I couldn't understand why this is fair. So make the long story short, I try to understand God. I try to do research. I try to understand the history of religion, where religion comes from, and that was eventually what led me to my atheism. Around age, my doubt started around age 16. I think by age 18, I was completely an atheist. I was still in Iran when I was an atheist, and I became an atheist without knowing any other atheist. Like I didn't know Carl Sagan, Richard Dawkins. It just didn't make sense to me. The only atheists I knew were the ones that were introduced to us as a warning in class, which were Freud and Karl Marx. And they were examples of what atheism can lead to.
So you were just like a free mind in a kind of a society that you still had the room to grow your mind and be free, to make yourself an atheist. But then to come out as an atheist, was that like drastically impossible? You had to get out of the country first. How is that still to how is to be an atheist on countries like that? I have no idea because I have suffered like the social prejudice to be
Right.
in Brazil. You suffer the
Mm.
social prejudice to talk about you. People will look at you weird when you say like you're an atheist. They're like, why?
Mm.
You have no God in your heart. You have no morals. They will say this flat in your face.
Mm.
But what is to feel the fear, the terror of death threats and other even worse?
Well,
Yeah,
it's not really just a
prison
threat.
or
It's not just a threat. In Iran, if you publicly come out as an atheist, you will be executed by the government. We had a teacher just a couple of years ago who didn't even come out as an atheist. What he did was he told his class that he doesn't think that Prophet Jonah, or Yunus in Arabic, wasn't swallowed by the fish. He wasn't swallowed by the fish, right?
not
He said,
taking it literally.
He thinks that was not really a story that happened. Maybe it's a metaphor for something, right? He
Yeah.
was executed for that in Iran. He didn't say God is not real. He didn't say fuck Muhammad. He didn't say Islam is dangerous. None of that. He just said, I don't think Prophet Jonah was swallowed by a goddamn fish. and his kid is like, I don't know, I think he's 7 year old now. Like he's like they left the family without a father, just because of expression of an opinion in front of a class, right? So again, that doesn't mean that in Iran, atheists don't tell other people that they're atheists. They just have to be careful about who they tell. I told my friends I was an atheist, right? I was a little bit careless about how. Well, let me tell you how careless I was, because I was a rebellious teenager, and so sometimes you get a little bit too outspoken, right? And one time I was arrested in Iran for being in a car with another girl, right? They stopped my car, the police stopped my car, and they asked me, "Who is this girl? Is she your sister?" And I was like, "No." They said, "Is she your cousin?" I was like, "No." Like, "Are you related in any way?" I was like, "No." I'm like, "Then you're arrested." I'm like, "Fuck." So, so they took me again. You have to be unlucky. Like, this doesn't mean every time I say something, that doesn't mean this is everyone's experiences. Experiences
Hmm.
vary based on the
Yes.
political climate, based on where you are in Iran, based on the mood of the person that you're dealing with at the time. So it's like, but I was arrested. It was my first time that to experience something like this. They took me to the police station, and this guy comes out and he starts giving me a fucking Islamic lecture. He tells me like, this is not the right way to be. You're a Muslim. Be like, you have to follow the rules. Like, you should be a good Muslim boy, and this is haram, and blah 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 blah. And I was like listening to him, and I was so fucking. I was getting bored of him lecturing me, and I was like this teenager, like with like really. And I was an ex-Muslim atheist at that time, and this guy is talking about Islam to me. So I told him like, listen, the things that you're telling me, the rules that you're saying that I should be following, they don't apply to me. And he was like, "What do you mean?" They were like, "Those are your rules. They don't apply to me because I'm not a Muslim." And he was like, "What do you?" He was like, "What do you mean you're not a Muslim?" I like, "I left Islam. I'm no longer a Muslim. So those are whatever you're telling me does not apply to me."
Wow.
And he was shocked, and he was looking at me, and I honestly think this guy saved my life because he told me, "Listen to me, little fuck. I can destroy your life right now with my pen. Don't you ever say that to anyone ever again." I think he went from being an asshole to all of a sudden being afraid for my safety. He felt like I'm gonna
Definitely.
get my skill, right? I'm gonna get myself killed, and he didn't. I think he was an asshole enough to arrest me for being with a girl, but not that big of it enough dick to want me to get killed for expressing an opinion.
I guess he follows the rules because he really believes, but in the really, inside, he's a good person because he
Right.
probably knows that it is bad to kill people just because they don't believe. And
Yeah.
that is actually the point where I think is the atheist republic such an important thing what you made, and thank you again for what you know to have created, because I think is the place, even if it's a virtual place, is the place where people need to be to feel safe from those authoritarian regimes. Doesn't matter if it's government, if it's a theocratic government, if it's just religious,
Mm.
if it's if it's the group where you live, is your family, because sometimes doesn't even matter the law. Some people are secluded into communities and sometimes
Mm.
into their houses. Kids, even teenagers that don't have their financial independence, they are oppressed and secluded into these communities that will not let them think out of the box, will not let them have any access to other things. I know this because we have this type of evangelical communities in Brazil that will like the kids do not watch TV, do not play, do not listen to radio, will only watch and consume evangelical media,
Mm.
newspaper and everything, and they make it closed, and it is a closed society, and people are like believe like, oh, this is the only God because they were raised in such a secluded environments or echo chambers, of communities, and it's all around the world. And I think that is why it's important, your
Right.
work. And thank you very much for giving your report on the fire. I have listened to that video. I will share here on the links. I love that is when you talk about when you were a kid of coming out atheist. I've listened to that video of yours a few times. It's really nice because I have not come out of religion that way. I was more like into like those teachings in the Bible school make no sense.
Mm.
I was not really. I was already out of the thinking on heaven and hell. I was like, oh, that is all metaphor. I thought the Bible was all metaphorical. I was like,
Mm.
yeah, none of this makes sense. So
No.
I will take this lead of like believe in a super loving God that is not specifically religious, Catholic, Christian God. And I would say like, oh, God is only one. People is miscategorizing or miscalling them. It's only one, and
Mm.
He's only good, and we don't actually know. So I start coming atheist really early in age and believing like and telling people that I was a spiritualist because say atheist was so bad. I have experienced my brother calling himself an atheist during his teenagehood, and I was already a little older. I'm the oldest one, and I was like, I don't want to go through this. And when I decided really to come out as an atheist, I experienced really much worse than I imagined. I did not
Wow.
think people would actually kick me out of groups,
Mm.
unfriend me, not talk to me anymore. Uh, and several unknown people online send me threats, go after my parents,
Wow.
and everything, tell me to stop talking about those issues. It's crazy. So I know, and that's why I talk to, like, for example, I have had guests before that's like, I'm an atheist, but I'm not into like holding the title like proudly like that. It's like, no, I do because
Yeah.
it's important to stand and show in Brazil, for example, where there are public people, famous people that have had to be uh, sued to apologize public to make
Oh.
public reports saying like atheists have no heart, that have no God in their hearts, therefore they have no morals. And
Mm.
I was like, you know,
Normalized. You want to normalize.
demonize the entire community of atheists, and that's why so many people are in the closet really afraid of come out with good reasons. But anybody that feels like this, go to Atheist Republic. You're gonna find a place where you're gonna find a lot of people that really think like us.
Right. No,
Yeah,
that's why I started it
yeah, sorry.
because I felt very lonely. So that's why I started Atheist Republic when I was selling in Iran because I wanted to just see if there are other people like me. But when I started it, it was very selfish. I just felt very isolated. But then eventually it turned into the world's largest atheist community. And again, even if you don't like atheist, like a lot of people like you don't. It doesn't have to be Atheist Republic. If you just know that there are many communities out there for you. It could be Atheist Republic. It could be a different community, and you
Yeah,
could
the
even start your own
communities.
community. Yeah.
Yeah, some people that are afraid still of the atheist because of it's a straw man because there is no atheist behavior. It's not that oh atheists will poop on the gods or not believe gods. It's not that the atheists actually believe. The atheist is just the lack of belief on all the claims that the religious people are making, and not specific. We're not coming and saying like there is no God.
Mm.
There are atheists that gonna go far on that way, but then that is a very bad straw man to say that atheists are the ones saying there is no God.
Yeah.
I think there is no evidence for there so many claims,
Right.
and in one of the analogies I've done in one of eight street epistemology groups is because they come with this like, but how to explain or to support or to hold so deeply this non-belief when you don't have, there is no way to disprove to prove the non-existence. And my point was like, well, what we are actually fighting against is for people to change their lives or put their money and their efforts into imaginary things in general, not
Right.
specifically one god or many gods or whatever, fairies, whatever you believe. It's more like, would you take this little coin you have that you can buy whatever you want and put in this gumball machine covered when you don't even know if there is balls in there for it to be collected? Would you
Yeah.
waste your coin into this? And they are like, yes, I would totally, because like, because there are two guys here, the Christian, the evangelical, or the Muslim, or the Buddhist, telling me that there are gumballs there, there are this color, this number, and I will collect this one if I put the coin in this way. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to put my coin there until I uncover and find out, because for me, there is a possibility that there is no one. There is no even one ball in that. And you guys are not even assuming that. You're jumping the first question, that is there a God? Is there a need to have a super powerful creator to create everything that's so complex? I have actually made a video in Portuguese talking about, like, if we actually need a being, a creator for everything, because everything is so complex, we should analyze the complexity of this being and where it comes from. And nobody does that exercise. I was always like that when that was one of the things when I was like 6 or 7, everybody telling me, like, so God created everything. I was like, okay, where was him before? I was like, oh, he was in the space. I was like, but there was no space. I was like, no, he was like, I was like, okay, he was floating on the nothing. Like, that's it. It's like, it's nothing. It's a black screen. And then there is God sitting on nowhere. And then he's bored of, like, but where did he come from? And nobody would have the conscience. I was like, guys, you're not buying me with this. I can't. And they like, stop questioning. Stop questioning.
Oh, wow.
That
Really?
was what I heard the most. And it was never coming from my parents, because they actually were very libertarian that way. They were like, oh yeah, religion is just like mythical stories. People do that because they believe morals. But morals is just, don't do to other people what you don't want them to do to yourself. And I got that secular thought, and I was like, so I don't need religion to have morals or to raise morality. And got free, like, but I took very long to accept myself as an atheist and to come out of the closet.
Right.
No.
Which is important to normalize.
Which is very important, and it needs to be done more for people in Brazil. But of course, we are in a very polarized time, very woke PC culture, fights of free speech and censorship. And I don't know if you heard, I know you guys actually did talk about this. I saw the episode, was the Jesus Gay Netflix.
Yes.
I was there typing on the super chat
Oh,
as well.
yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for this.
And I talked about this all the time, because I don't know if you know, their studio, their headquarters was attacked on Christmas night. They tried to set it on fire,
Yes,
because
I saw
we
that.
have
We
such a
covered
big
that as well.
community.
Yeah.
And that community, that group, the comedian group, they are always fighting this censorship in Brazil, because we have this we have secularism on our constitution, but we don't really have secularism in practice. We have like evangelical party, we have a fish party, like Jesus party.
Wow.
We have an evangelical entire, like, bench on the Senate, and
Wow.
in the municipalities. There are like crosses, and and there are Jesus marches being patronized by like a patron by the public money in many cities. And it's really not a part, and it should be, but then everybody, because the thing is kind of installed, so people just look over it, and it's problematic. So we have the ATEA, that is the association in Brazil that tries to have their lawyers, and with the charity and the donations of the followers, they can move actions and do a lot of process towards the whatever is infringing more individual rights and the public secularism. But it's a very complicated problem. And then I don't know how much you guys do, and you could talk a little bit about how it works and how people can actually reach, which type of help you guys can support or you know direct the community
Yeah,
when
I
they
mean,
need help.
what we're doing at Atheist Republic is we're trying to make shows in different languages. So right, we have our English news show, which is on YouTube, Atheist Republic. Now we have a Persian show. We're working on our Arabic shows to try to make that a regular thing. And then we're going to go to Urdu, and I think after Urdu we might do Portuguese. I don't know if you would be interested in participating in that. And
Of
Atheist,
course, I would
yeah,
totally, and
yeah.
probably be able to find other people that could help from
Wow,
Atea specific that already work on the atheist community there.
that's
We
good.
have like I know one person that I talk closely from the Atea in Brazil is Bruna Yoshida. She is actually Brazilian Japanese like me, but she lives in Japan, and she's kind of like the cleaning lady of the room. So she's like cleaning the bad comments and try to keep it clean. And it's difficult because they suffer so many strikes. I know the page was suspended
Hmm.
last month or so, and it's just so hard. It's very complicated. We totally would be into to make a collab with Atheist Republic would totally help our community there.
No, thank you. Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
That's nice. Yeah. What about the cancel culture and censorship? I have seen a lot of recently, mainly when you talk to the, I love her, the nurse that you have talked about the anti-vaxxers.
The who? Oh yeah,
She
yeah, yes, yes,
swears a lot,
yes,
just
yes.
like me. I do that all the time, so it's
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
have problems. But that is kind of the little bit of the cancel culture and censorship that happens online nowadays, no? Because like to not get notifications or kind of it's not a real deplatforming, but it's just like my last interview with Adam Kokesh. I got like 40 views, and I was like, wow, the guy is a presidential nominee for the Libertarian Party, and we have shared the video, but doesn't get. And a lot of people have come on
Mm.
private message saying like, I found you doing like a super dark search on other people that you have interviewed, and then I found I would expect that your channel should be like would be suggested, but no,
No, no,
it's not into that. Okay. So
yeah.
how the atheist experience, how the atheist republic experience the cancel culture.
Well, I mean, my speech was canceled in university because of the New Zealand shooting, which I don't know what it had to do with me. That was actually covered in the news. Our page and groups were removed by Facebook 3 times. We managed to get it back every time um, because of the noise that we made around it. But the thing is that the problem is that our page was too big for them to completely remove. Like we had so many fans that went in and supported us and made it such a big mess that we managed to get our page back. The problem is that a lot of other smaller pages, unfortunately, when they go down, they don't ever come back up, right? No matter, even if it was completely unfair, because it is hard to make a bigger, as much of a noise around every single one of them. So, I mean, I'm hoping that this is a temporary thing, just like what happened during the Scare. It's very similar to what I don't know if you know much about the Red Scare, the McCarthy thing in the United States. I feel like the cancel culture that we're experiencing when we already went through it before, and it was a short-lived, ridiculous thing that now everybody looking back at it could see how ridiculous it was. I think what the Red Scare, if you actually compare to Red Scare, there's a lot of similarities because, and the Red Scare was even worse, which gives me hope that this is going to end soon. Um, if you think about it, like during the Red Scare, people in the United States were worried about communism taking over everything, just like people during now think like, oh, Nazism is back, and Nazism is going to just take over again. If you look in history at the Red Scare, communism was never as big of a threat as they thought it was. Like it was never going to come and topple the United States. Like that theory was completely unfounded. and people, and especially, and now also Nazism is not going to come back and take over the West, right? Like, so that's also
Yeah.
exaggerated. Another thing that was similar is that the accusations of, people being Nazis or white supremacists, just because of, having comments uh, that is
I've
not.
been I've been accused of. And I
Yeah,
was
me
like,
too.
but I'm not even white.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I've been called a Nazi, white supremacist. I've been called a diet Nazi. I don't know what that is. But if you look at the risk here, people were also being accused of being communists left and right. Like you could, oh, you find a picture of you shaking this hand of this guy that went to this worker union. Oh my God, a communist. But it was even worse because the government, the FBI was involved. Like people were actually being investigated. People were actually being like brought to, with accusations were a lot more, the consequences were a lot bigger than right now, right? Like, so, and what's another similarity? Oh, another similarity is that the accusing people left and right of being Nazis or racists or white supremacists right now is helping the actual white supremacists, right? Because they're becoming a lot more relevant than they are. They're like such a tiny group, but they feel like they have a lot of influence. It's hard to identify them now because everybody is being accused of being racist or the actual racist. When you point to
Exactly.
them and be like, "Oh, come on, this guy is racist," people are like, "Oh yeah, sure, everybody's racist these days." They're like, "No, this guy is an actual goddamn racist, right?" But you can't actually identify the racist. So and that's another similarity because during the Red Scare, the actual communist spies were loving it because it was really hard to find them because everybody was being accused of being a communist spy, right? So there's a lot of similarities. And another thing that I think this whole cancel culture might be, I predicted that this is it's going to be a short term thing because,
I hope so.
and so did other people, because the standards that they have was so goddamn high, like of what is okay and what's not okay, and the standards was so high that even their own heroes could not meet those standards, right? And a lot of people underestimate. People are like, oh no, you guys are exaggerating. The cancel culture is not that big. This is not that big of a deal. And now I look at the people that used to say those things. They're being canceled by their own communities because they just said one small thing out of line, right? I mean, like, you see,
Exactly.
you guys are being hunted by your own community. I mean, some of the most, left people, heroes of the left, are now being attacked by their community because they're not just completely in line. Um,
Yeah. It's a
so
witch hunt that is like for a Puritan that they will never find. Like everybody commits mistakes and everybody says something that is not PC. The PC culture, it's very witch hunting. It's like a very like a type of inquisition, social inquisition.
but that's why it will never. But the difference between that and the Inquisition is that the Inquisition was going after other people, right? The reason why the woke cult will not last is because it goes after its own, right?
Yeah, they eat
And
themselves.
its own leaders are not going to survive it. That's why it's going to eat itself. That's why it's
Yeah.
going to, that's why it's going to stop. And you can see that now I think we're coming out at the other end of it. I see a lot of comedians making fun of it. It's not very
Hmm.
popular online. Even leftist people are making fun of it. Um, you could see I loved it when they went after. I think the highlight. I mean, when they went after ContraPoints, for example, or when they go after David Pacman and Kyle Klinsky, I could see like, look, these are the kind of people that the leftist community likes, and by going after them, you're making a lot of the leftists hate this whole identity politics, right? But
Yeah.
then I think the highlight of this becoming unpopular among the left was when they went after Bernie for being a misogynist, apparently, right? And I was like, this is beautiful. Like, you can't do a better job because Bernie supporters are the left of the left, right? The most leftist people. So when you go after Bernie with being a misogynist, you're making these people hate identity politics. Like, you cannot go after Bernie Sanders and calling him a misogynist and you not make these people were like, okay, well, fuck everything with like your goddamn identity politics. So
Yes.
your ally, you're gonna lose any potential of any allies. Like you're gonna become such a tiny movement. So I think we're coming. I think it's gonna end, but I think it was extremely destructive while it lasted, and the damage from it is gonna last for be with us for a while. Not
Mhm.
because there is a big movement, but because the places that they managed to have the influence, especially in Silicon Valley, like on the influence they had on Google, on Twitter, on Facebook, because the problem is that the philosophy of the woke cult snuck into the community standards of these platforms, and the problem is that the woke cult is mostly based on this false idea of protecting minorities
Mhm.
in Western countries, and the people that they see as the victims of oppression in minority country are often the oppressors in other countries, right? And the problem with these platforms is that they're global. Like most of conversations are most conversations all around the planet are is not is happening on one of these companies' platforms, right? Like there are more people right now having discussions on one of these companies' platforms than there are offline, right? So the community standards that and the rules that they come up with is going to dictate what conversations people have on a global level. So the fact that the culture of this tiny city in California has been so influenced by this fringe woke cult, this fringe but powerful woke cult, is the fact that is now dictating what people get to say about like Islam or other things on a
Yeah.
global level has been very very damaging, especially for people that have been trying to fight oppression and in
Yeah.
many other countries. Yeah.
Yeah, and this brings back to what we said before, the authoritarian regimes. Doesn't matter if it's a police, if it's a government setting policies, or if it's like, in, and actually it's a parallel that I have mentioned before. I was like, why are we doing this again? We have gone through the political dictatorship years ago, decades ago. We have people alive today that have gone through those governments and know how evilish they are, and we now going like through this, let's do the same thing through the internet. It's like, guys, we're just in another spectrum of society. It's just the virtual world, of the reality, but we still need to support the free speech, or we're going to start the dictatorship online. And we have gone through this, we know it's bad. Why we're going to do this again? Basically. So a little bit on the experience, like you said, to eat themselves and try to make back up, and I hope so. But it is like, I'm like, for example, I will tell people to go watch the Adam Kokesh conversation that was not long enough for us to express and talk about how important are the individual rights,
Right.
and actually the idea of the government is to defend the individual rights, and the smallest minority that has to be protected from. Imagine if they're like Bill Gates against the rest of the world. Let's take his money, democracy.
Mm.
So who has to be protected ultimately by a government? Why did we make a government to start? And it was like, to protect the individual. The individual rights is the most important right we have. Like, that's why doesn't even need someone to register a complaint about a death. It's a public process. Oh, someone
Mm.
killed someone. Let's take that person in, because the right of the person to have their lives.
Right.
But then we stretch it so too big. These rights of being alive, and then to have a house, to have kids, to have family, to have whatever car, and that's why we made our government too big and too expensive, too corrupt, and now we need to break that down. It's a lot on the politics conversation, but here today we're going to talk about atheists and religiosity, like, or these beliefs. One thing that I wanted to talk to you, because I'm going to kind of focus a little bit on your videos on the Twitter that are super interesting. People go check everything news. uh, Atheist Republic is covering, and it's really nice. I like that you mentioned that there is a new Persian show. I know this is
Well,
something new.
yeah. I mean, it's been going on for a year now. So.
and to have all the other communities coming on. But the at least for the what is in the media on Western society nowadays is like, I think, a lot on the science and beliefs, the science versus beliefs or faith, would be like anti-vaccines, that I watched one of your videos and I loved, and I wanted to talk to you just a little bit because I saw your your position, on the politics, to be more libertarian, but there is the public health over everything, and I agree with
Mm.
that. I have actually talked about, like, I have at some point supported the point of, like, if you to give the right of the to the parents to not vaccinate their kids, but then they lose the right to bring to the public school. So they would have to find a private school that would accept kids not vaccinated. And then watching your video, I actually changed my mind, because I actually, as a physician, I know the importance as like a poliomyelite vaccines that we can spread just to be in the same environment. So for the kids not vaccinated, it would be very important for their health to be in between vaccinated kids and be immunized, in the secondary immunization, or like through the environment. So yeah, I thought it's nice that you guys just don't cover actually the atheism, but a lot of politics, and uh, invite people to philosophize, to think about those questions.
Right. I mean, a lot of people think my position is a bit extreme, because my position is that, again, I say that as a libertarian myself, as a limited government in person. I think that, um, so a lot of people think it's contradictory to my views, my libertarian views, when I say that a parent that doesn't vaccinate their kids, the government should step in and remove the kid from the parents, right? But I don't. People are like, okay, that's a bit too extreme. Like, maybe don't let them go to public school, but that is a bit too much. And I was like, okay, but if a parent, for example, starts beating up their kid, right? You see that in that situation, if the child protective services come in and take away the kid, you see that that's justified, right? So beating up a kid and exposing to disease, I don't understand what's the difference. Oh, hello.
She showed up. She never showed up, and I normally ask them to take her away. But since we're talking about
That's
kids,
okay.
it's a nice subject. Huh?
Hi.
Say
Hi.
hi. Say hello. Just woke up from the
So,
nap.
so cute.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I actually have another thing, because, like, in this subject, in the case you guys talked on the video, it was actually a kid died from a
Right.
mom refusing to give the treatment after the kid being experienced, like, I think, flu, I believe. And I was like, in that case, I believe the mom should be responsibilized, because she had many chances to give the proper treatment to the kid. Like,
Yes.
she avoided the vaccination, that was the first step for the prevention, and when to treat, she refused. So, like, it was 2 times at least that she was refusing to give the care, and she is the caregiver, so she is responsible. It's a type of negligence, and probably we could charge more than that. And in that case, when she already caused harm, death of one of the kids, I believe it would maybe be safer to take the other kids away.
Yeah. Yeah. Because exactly, because I think, okay, so the limited government doesn't mean no government. That doesn't mean I don't see a role for the government. I think the government role is to protect its citizens from harm. And the main citizens that you need to protect the most are the ones that can't protect themselves, especially if they're being betrayed by the people that are supposed to be protecting them. So if the government has any responsibility to the citizens to protect them, I think the children who are the most vulnerable are the main priority. That's where government needs to step in the most, right? Especially if, so I mean, if a parent was doing exorcism on their kids, I think child services should step in and remove the kids. So this is not different. If you can easily protect them from disease and you're choosing not to, then you're not fit to be a parent, and the government should come and protect the children because the parents are not protecting the children.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Am I mute now? No, am I
No.
not? I thought I was mute before. So no, and other thing that is important, it's the thing on the hitting the kids, because we actually, you guys talked about some religious page telling how to hit the kids properly. Like you
Yeah.
have to hurt to
Yeah.
be effective. And I was like, I was just so
So
I'm so disgusted about that, because I have talked about in the street epistemology. We talked with a girl that she's very against the spanking, the punishment, the physical punishment, and I am personally against. I was not. I changed my mind when I was pregnant. I read more, I philosophized more, I thought a lot about this, talked to my husband about it. I used to believe that a little slap, it's necessary. And I have very high standards against it nowadays, because I
mm.
see how common and banalized it is in Brazil, and we see the IQ curve results on
Oh,
that.
really?
And we know these studies that's like there's no way of making your IQ higher, but there is a lot of ways to make it lower.
Really? I
Of
didn't.
course, like in third world country, you have like low nutrition, you have like no low education, but one of the important ones that in early ages are so important is the violence, is the negative reaction of parents, and mainly the physical abuse. And I have experienced parents like you in Brazil, you actually experience parents slapping their kids on the face in the middle of the streets, and
Oof.
nobody does anything. And we
Yeah.
have like the tutelar council to help, the kids, like you're supposed to, but nobody's like, oh, who is going to actually take care? And I, as a physician, have contact them in a public health hospital, and they told me they would go visit the family in another time. And I was like, no, the kid was spanked like to be hurt, not like it was not just a slap. I don't want to send this kid back home, and they
Mm.
would not come to help. So it's like it's problematic. It's policies, like we said, the government sometimes make the system, but sometimes the system just doesn't work. So it's like
Yeah.
in the
I'm
end we are
familiar with
making
that. Yeah.
laws that are like, so that's why sometimes I'm more libertarian, like don't do it. We're going to do effective measures and not just do measures and make a huge government that doesn't work in the end and doesn't
Mm.
deliver the service that's supposed to do, because this is what they've done in Brazil, like that is our experience in Brazil. They were against privatizing things. They were like, no, the state needs to take care of everything because it's going to be sure that is the best to everybody. Politics.
Yeah.
um, and we end up with a huge government corrupted and really inefficient.
Yeah.
So well, do you experience a little bit of this? Like in Brazil, we have like all the issues with that. It's like,
Oh,
what do
yeah,
you
a lot.
feel?
No, yeah, I do that. It's strange to me that people that who mistrust big corporations, like, okay, fine, big corporations can be corrupt, but why do you trust the government so much? Like,
Yeah, and
how's
the
the
problem is when the government gets together with the big corporations, because that actually is
right?
something in Brazil. Everybody's like, oh, I don't want a free market because the big corporations will take over. And it's like, you understand that the free market, everybody has the same opportunity. But in the government that we have in Brazil nowadays, that is actually a corporativism and
Right,
not free market.
right,
What the
right.
government is doing is actually giving benefits to the big corporations, and that's why it's impossible to compete with them, because they're working
Yes,
together, and most of the time because the owners of those companies are also the politicians
right. So
or
the role,
family. So it's
so
like
another
it's a
role of another role of the government should be to if any companies get too big, like they have to come and break monopolies. Like that is another role that I see for the government, right? So to make sure that there's a heavy competition between companies, right? So again, just because I'm against too much big government, that doesn't, because a lot of people misunderstand libertarianism and they confuse them with anarchists. They're like, oh, you
oh
don't
yeah,
want
totally
government. They're
good
like, oh,
position.
you don't like government. You don't want government. You think government's bad. Like, no, I want government.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
say we're not anarchists. There's a lot of things that government is supposed to do. They're supposed to protect us. They're supposed to have a justice system. They need to have police. They need to have an army. They need to protect the citizens. They need to make sure that there's free competition. They need to make sure there's no monopolies. And in some cases, for example, they need to tax. negative externalities and they need to subsidize positive externalities. This was already in Adam Smith's book from the very beginning. So like again, there's a role like the market doesn't see everything. Yeah, that was already in. We know the market doesn't see everything. That's why the government comes and tax negative externalities and subsidizes positive externalities. We and also there's a role for government if your private companies are not sophisticated enough to do certain things, the government still has a role. If there's no private company that can go to space, the government could be involved in that. If there's no private company big enough to build giant roads, the government could be involved in that. If there's no private company big enough to build a dam in some countries, the government could get involved in that. But they need to step back as soon as there is a private company big enough to do that. Then they step back. There's an in-between phase as well where there is like, okay, private companies could do it, but maybe with partnering with government because they're not yet that big enough. But in a country like United States, there's definitely big enough companies to even go to space, right? So again, this is a huge topic.
It is. Politics is complicated because we talk about this freedom and all this resource putting together, and people sometimes have like a and I like that you mentioned the straw man. I actually mentioned this on the conversation with Adam Kokesh, saying like, they are going to straw man us, saying that we don't want government, we want anarchy, and that is not what libertarians actually want. That's why it's not anarchists. It's libertarians. Right. We just want a smaller government, to have a government that we can rely when you need, but to be small enough to not cause us this much problem we have nowadays because of government. We're all talking about how it's problematic. And one of the interesting things was like on the public health control as well. Because, for example, everybody's talking about coronavirus right now in China and the suppression of information coming out of there. And also, of course, we talk about a not free place, not free country. And, the latest videos coming out of there are very, for me, it's shocking to see that lady asking for help and complaining and talking about the situation there. Because I think the media here in Western society just takes the coronavirus as it's like the epidemics. It's like a Resident Evil virus risk, like they do like the little bit of the sensationalist media coverage of like, we all can die from this. And I don't think it's like that, biologically speaking.
Okay. Okay, here's a question. How many people have died from the coronavirus so far?
Today we can check. I don't know. The last time I checked, it was last week, I guess, and it was like it had reduced the increasing, like just the rate went like kind of down, like it was like 4,000.
Let's see. How many people died from corona?
And also, what has not been spoken much is because we have we have an underdiagnosis of it. So it's like we are putting like the lethality is being overinflated because we don't have the diagnosis of all the people, because all the mild cases, all the asymptomatic cases are not being diagnosed or not being reported. So it's like I think it's a little.
So 2,000. Okay, so 2,000. Okay.
Okay.
How many people do you think die from the flu every year?
Oh, don't know.
Globally, the estimates are around 600,000. So more than 500,000.
Okay.
So think about the reactions people have had so far to the coronavirus. 2,000 people so far have died. 2,000. Compared to how much people talk about
I thought it was 4,000 people died from it.
So, okay, I'm reading.
Even if it's like 4, it's still like it's all.
Yeah, let's say 10,000. Fine, 10,000. Okay, but think about it: 10,000, and people are acting like the world could come to an end. And we're talking about the flu. I'm not talking about the flu. Hasn't killed 600,000 in total. It cut 600,000 every year. Every year.
It's a huge number. Yeah, it's to even beat the normal flu, it has to grow so much more.
So why is it
scary?
that people...
No, look, I've watched some professionals following up day to day of the infection, and I stopped following last week because I was like, okay, this is not a big deal. I understand that people that don't understand about this will make a big deal, that the media is talking about it all the time. But what I expect is gonna be just like it's like any other new virus or microorganism that is it is more dangerous for the old people, for pregnant people, for kids. And it's but
Why is
they
this
are
why is
low
there a panic?
immunity, so they
Why is
are
there
a
a
risk. They
why
are
is there why
more
is there
risk.
such a panic over this and not over the flu?
Yeah, people are actually avoiding to actually take their vaccines and then freaking out with coronavirus. It's kind of silly and it's funny, but no, it's
Wait,
funny in some way. It's sad in other way because I actually have talked about against those myths. I think this is a little bit of the media effect of make so much, put so much focus on something that in fact is just to talk about something and do not measure the implications of it, because you could say some people are freaking out about the infections, you see in Brazil, people, my sister sent me a picture and I was laughing out loud, from the bus station, and they are wearing gloves and masks that are not even protective for any type of infection. Okay, so it's you're just spending your money and looking ridiculous. Anyways.
but I
And
mean, yes. So
there is a point. It's if you
how many of them do you
are
think are not
suspected
vaccinated?
yourself, actually it's a good thing to
How many of those people do you think don't go get their flu shots?
maybe that's why they are freaking out now, because they
Yeah.
shit, I did not take my flu shot. Now I need to protect myself in another way.
No,
Uh,
yeah.
I don't know. One thing that's important to say, I saw a friend of mine. She's not in the health area, so she's just someone that is afraid, and she actually had an infection and she did it right. Use the mask, try to go to some medical department store, you have the proper masks, okay, and use it when you are with the infection, not when you are trying to prevent. The preventive way is the vaccination, but to prevent to spread is the mask. And that's why we put the mask on the patient and not in everybody else. Of course, when we are working, we all enter the room with that, because then the entire environment is contaminated. But in fact, the use of the mask all the time as preventive is actually worse, because you're going to touch your face much more than
Right.
you would when you don't have a mask. Just saying. That's important to let people know. So yeah, other things here is I love that you guys talked about how the second opinion on the public health on the doctors is important, and I think that is very important to say, because uh, of course there are many doctors that sometimes will give just an answer even if they are not really sure about that information, just to not say I don't know. So it's
Right.
nice to ask for a second opinion, but I wanted to tell you that it's not that easy to get a second opinion here in Canada. People all around the world have a very different have uh, a delusional idea of how good the Canadian health public system is. Public health system here is really bad. And I have talked to people mainly in Brazil, because in Brazil we have a public system that it's universal. So even if you go right now to Brazil, you're going to be treated there. Just being in the territory, just to be inside the country, they will treat you. Okay.
Really? For
So,
free?
yes,
Wow.
that's how it works in Brazil, and that's constitutional rights.
Wow.
So it's interesting because in fact, Brazilian public system, it's kind of a socialist, but it's very democratic in the way of operation. Their operational system is you can go to whatever hospital and whatever clinic you want.
Mm.
Sometimes some specialized clinics, you're going to need to go to the first level to get just a paper saying that you need to go to the neurologist or whatever specialist, but you can actually change. Here in Canada, I actually don't know what you would have to do to get a second doctor opinion.
I mean, I
It's
was in
almost
Canada.
impossible to have a doctor change. I have seen a lot of people, because I'm not um, licensed here yet. I'm going through this matching process, And everybody talks to me like how much they need doctors here, that I really need to stay here because they have some doctor that did not treat their problem and they cannot change. And this is such a common problem. And I was like, why don't you just go to the next clinic? It's like, no, I can't go to the emergency room that I'm not going to get treated. I would stay there for hours to see a doctor that will just send me home with the symptomatic treatment, and I will not get referred to the other doctor that in the clinic. And that is so ridiculous, because it's like
But
I actually, it's
I
important.
walked in Vancouver. When I was in Vancouver, I sometimes just walk into a clinic and I just see a doctor with no appointment.
Yeah,
And if they don't, if I don't like them, I'll walk to the next clinic. So I
yeah,
don't, I haven't had that issue.
yeah. Here I hear that problem all the time. I actually have mentioned to people, it's like, why don't you just go to the, oh no, because your doctor is such a bureaucratic way to go through
But for me,
changing
it
your
was
doctor that
simple.
most of
For me,
people
it was
just
simple.
sit and
For me, I didn't have a family doctor. I just went and saw
to
every time.
the emergency room,
Not
different
an
doctor that
emergency room. Not an emergency room. Just
the
walk in clinic.
clinic.
Clinic, yeah. I just walk in, I see a doctor, and if I don't like her or him, I come back to the same clinic at another time and get a and or go to a different clinic. They don't really,
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
know if it
I
could be
think
different in other places. Like
I think you're
depend maybe
talking about more
the size
serious
of the
issues.
city.
I think you're talking about serious issues. For example, if you have a serious health issue and you go to a clinic and they refer to a doctor, you have to stick with that doctor. But I think about smaller issue, if you go to a doctor, like, oh, doctor,
Yeah,
I
if
hurt
it's
here.
just like a flu or a cold, you're probably gonna see a different doctor every time. And
Yeah, you could see, and that in smaller issues, I think you can see as many doctors as you want. Because I remember I went to a clinic in Vancouver, and she recommended I get homeopathy, and like, holy fuck, no! And I went to a different doctor, so it was easier. Couldn't believe it. Like, she's
homeopathy,
a doctor. She was a
love
doctor.
homeopathy.
She was like a religious, like full on degrees and everything. Doctor, medical doctor, and she was like recommending homeopathy. I was like, what the fuck?
You did not even give him a
Her.
chance. You should have taken that medicine, and you have to think hard. You believe. If you don't believe, it doesn't work. It's just
Mm.
like I love that actually as one of the religious thought, like uh ways of thinking that is like I think is hilarious. It's like I always loved like how my friends would do those promises like to the saints, like, oh, if I get that thing, I will not eat chocolate, for example. And
Mm.
I had one colleague in university that she would do that promise all the time, and then I would catch her eating like chocolate in different forms. And I was like, but you're eating chocolate. I don't know. I promise to not eat the bar chocolate. So like if it's like a bonbon, or chocolate candy, or if it's chocolate powder, or if it's chocolate milk. Again, and I was like, you really think your saint is dumb? And I think your saint would be so mad that he would actually punish you in the end. So it's like, I love the double standards and the
Yeah.
exercise, how they stretch philosophically to work to make it work. It's amazing. You guys have talked about the gender identity and sexism and the laws, and never always go back to laws and authoritarianism and regimes to try to protect people or stuff. What are your ideas like, and how important that is actually a gender issue into the atheism, actually into theocratic places, because people actually suffer oppression, and they can be killed into
Mm.
countries, no, just for being gay, for being come out of closet in.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so the way uh, I'm not completely against identity politics. I think identity politics, there's a right way to do identity politics and there's a wrong way to do identity politics. And to simplify it, I put it in two different categories, right? If your identity politic is I am this, therefore give me privileges, that's the wrong form of identity politics, right?
Yeah.
I'm purple, so I deserve to be treated better than other people for some reason, right?
Yeah.
But if you say, and that's bad identity politics. But if you say I am a part of the purple people, and they're hunting purple people, so please protect me, save me. They're hunting purple people. That's the right way of doing identity politics, right? So, for example, if you demand to be treated better because you're a man or a woman, or because you're white, or because you're black, if you demand to be treated in any better way because of history or because of superior genes or anything like that, that's nonsense, right? You can't demand better treatment or more rights because of the your identity. But if you say, listen, like I'm a Jew living in Nazi Germany, can I hide in your basement? Okay? They're killing Jews. You can't be like, oh, you can't, what? Who cares that you're a Jew? You're playing identity politics. Well, I might not care that I'm a Jew,
I understand.
but they are hunting Jews.
Yeah,
So,
but
so the
it's
thing is that
an
you
interesting.
you don't think that you could say like, I don't think my identity makes me special. There are other people that are making my identity special by
Yes.
targeting my identity. Okay,
Yeah,
so it's
but
not.
it's still like, for example, one of the things I think we have talked so much about politics and policies itself. It's like, what about, because like when people come with this, because we have done like we have made a bunch of like sexist laws recently in Brazil because of that type of identity politics, and I'm very against it in many sense. Philosophically saying that only women can talk about woman issues, in the same way as saying like we need to protect a woman, because what I see is like we already protect the individual. We say like nobody can take other people's lives. So if you being threatened, doesn't matter for which reason, you already have the law to protect you. You don't need an extra law. And that's what I was talking against. I actually talk against this type of laws because I think that is just another way to make the government bigger, to say like we need another law to protect blacks, to protect women, to protect purple people, to protect people that believe in the spaghetti monster. And I was like, no, we don't, because we already have the law that protect people.
Mm,
And if I need to, like, it's like the idea of like, if I need to make a law to protect purple people, it's almost that I'm saying they are not people,
right.
because
So
I need to
I
make another
agree.
law that's just special for them. But of course, I do agree with the idea of protecting people in general. What I don't agree with the idea of judgment over those type of things that you said, like we don't care, other people should not care, and that should not be brought to the judgment on like legal level, just because I can actually be, for example, I cannot be gay. You can hit me on the face and I come in front of a judge in Brazil and tell that you hit me on the face and call me a lesbian, and they will give you charge you more and worse because of that. And that is just an story. And what I'm saying here is like, because like what I believe is that justice works in a way that judges evidence. And when we put like words, banning intentions, we are judging things that we cannot certify, we cannot verify, like stories of like, oh, he called me gay and then punched me in the face. It's like, okay, so you get more jail than just punching him in the face. Well, but never called him gay. No, he did. No, he didn't. Like, intentions and words and like even experience, like, like, okay, you can have a recording, but imagine if I'm the person that calls people gay, or call people oranges. Okay, I will start calling people no pineapple. Like, I don't like pineapple. I call people pineapple. I call people pineapple when I don't like them, and then someone comes like, "Oh, you being discriminatory to pineapple." I actually identify myself as a pineapple, and I see that you're using pineapple as an offensive way, and now we need to ban people to call each other pineapple in an offensive way. And it's like, let's stop right there. Like, I don't know.
Right. I mean, okay, but you're giving the examples of asking for special privileges. But if you're asking about equal rights, sometimes you do need to focus. Maybe the government shouldn't be focusing. The government should be like, oh, everybody is.
Definitely, government should not have so much power. For example, on the marriage,
But let me
why
but
the LGBTQ
let me make
need
this
to
point.
fight for rights? We should not give this power to the government to give people's marriage certificates, so we don't need to fight for their rights. Like whoever wants, get married. That's it. Done.
Yeah, okay, but there are examples of sometimes that you should focus on certain identities. Maybe not by the government, but at least by some nonprofits and some activist groups, right?
Oh
So,
yeah, no, then it's totally free. Yeah, for sure.
no, yeah, I'm not just saying it's free and they have the right, but I think that it also makes strategic sense, right? Let me give you like
Yeah,
an example.
I mean, free in the way the freedom of like whatever group active is for. Like, yeah, I think it is like that. It's like a, kind of like a voluntary. People will always stand to
Let's
protect the
say
minorities.
let's say you have like you have a helicopter, right? And you're landing in ISIS territory when ISIS was still relevant, okay? And you're trying to go in and you're trying to save some people, right? And the people are like running away from ISIS and they're jumping inside your helicopter, right? And your helicopter is almost full capacity and you have room for only one more person, okay? And the people that are running to the next two people that are trying to get in to save them, for you to save them, one of them is a Sunni man and the other one is a Yazidi woman. Which one are you going to let in the helicopter?
Well, by the probably the all the times convention, let's say the patriarchy, evil patriarchy, will save the woman. Probably.
Well, yeah, the Yazidi woman. I would save the Yazidi woman because the Yazidi woman has it a lot worse under ISIS than the Sunni man. So I'm going to choose based on identity. I'm going to pick the Yazidi woman over the Sunni man because the
But I
Sunni
don't
man.
think they would be making that choice because of what you making the choice. It's just like the Titanic. Who got the boats first?
I'm
Who
not
got
talking
the
about other
same?
people.
You
I'm
know,
just
it was
talking.
like a woman. They always put the woman and the kids in front, and I believe they were using the same behavior of judging that. I
I'm,
don't know. I was using that. I was just saying like what I would expect society to do because I know people want to say patriarchy is evil for women, and it was not. Like I'm not a third wave
right.
feminist. I am a egalitarian. But yeah, I don't know. I would
Yeah.
not be able
No,
to.
third wave feminism is about extra privileges and extra rights, undeserved rights, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about what other people would do and what their reasons were. I'm talking about what is the right thing to do. Wouldn't the right thing to do at that time not be to just to accept the Yazidi woman over the Sunni man? The Sunni man, he has the same religions as ISIS people. He has a much higher chance of survival under an ISIS territory than a Yazidi woman who's probably going to be turned into a sex slave. I'm going to choose based on the identity of the two people. I'm going to give preference to the Yazidi woman. Not because she's saying that, oh, I'm a Yazidi woman, I'm more special. Not because of what she thinks about how special being a woman is or how special being Yazidi is, but
No,
based on what
I see what you mean. That
based on based on what ISIS's preferences for Yazidi woman is. Like based on how big of a deal other people have made her identity, not based on what she has made her identity of how big of a deal that is. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, but I know what you mean. But what I was saying is like yeah, the judgment of people on like these levels, like to be a woman, to be this religion, to be in this place, there are all like spectrums, like levels of her that is something natural we're gonna do. Like the first thing I said, I said, oh, just for being man and woman, we are already judging it for sure. There is this. I don't deny that identity of a person, but I don't recognize identity politics as good because what I mentioned before is like we are gonna always defend the minority, and when we are defending her as again, we put the same principles and apply the same methodology to decide the was here. But in my point is like, for example, in Brazil or even the United States, that we don't have a pure democracy, it's like a democratic republic. The republic was there to actually defend the minorities against the majority that would be a pure democracy, or is would happen as like the majority would decide what happens to the minority. That's why we have the republic, and that's something that we already have, and that's why I talk all the time, like to protect the minorities. So it's supposed to work like that in Brazil when the Bolsonaro came and said like, oh, I'm gonna only rule for Christians that are 86% of the population. It's like, no, you're not doing that because you're in a democratic republic and you have to rule for everyone. And you're not a king. We're not in a monarchy. You're not deciding things by yourself. That's why we have the Senate and the Congress to stop you from even like trying to oppress. Like if anybody, let's say like tomorrow in Brazil, people start being attacked just for being atheists. We don't need to make a special law to protect atheists, because it's like, no, we know we're being hunted because of a special identity that we call ourselves and other people recognize, but we're still gonna claim the law to protect our rights as a person, as everybody else.
The law doesn't need to change, but execution wise, you go and protect the people that are being targeted the most. Like when it comes you know what I mean, like when it comes to enforcing the protections that you have, right? Like the law doesn't need to say that, oh, give women special protection, or give gay people special protection, or give black people, or give white people, or give purple people special protection. The law just needs to say that everybody has equal rights and protection regardless of their gender, race, and whatever, right? That's what the law will say. But when it comes to execution of this law, when it comes to upholding people's rights, the government doesn't have unlimited resources, right? You cannot go and protect everybody at the same time. You protect the people that are being targeted because of their identity more than the people that are not being targeted.
It's like, why the government cannot do that is because it's very inefficient, because it is too big and it's spending resources in other things that should not. Because one of the things we talked before here was just like, what is the purpose of these laws? It's like, what is the purpose of the government was to protect the minority? And what is the purpose of the prison, for example, the jail? Because in Brazil we have a prisonal crisis. It's because we're putting people in jail that are not, should not, or supposed not be there. And I mean with that I believe jail was made to put people that cause risk of killing other people. It's like, violent crimes and not just crimes. So it's like, in Brazil, we have a lot of people that are just like financial crimes, or they stole a chicken. I don't know. If someone steals a chicken, I don't know, make him pay the chicken, go home and cook the chicken, probably hungry, putting people in jail for using drugs, for like, I don't know, doing vandalism or whatever, or stealing money from other people, even corruption, like make them pay with interest forever. And but don't put them in jail, because we have so many criminals that actually murders, or people that are violent or gonna cause some harm to other people. Those should be in jail. And also, like, I always try to talk about policies a little bit, because I think that's it. It's like, we need to reduce the size and the number of like process. Like, if you create another law to judge, like, when people call each other names and feel offended on the streets, of course we're not gonna put murderers in jail. Because we were like, what are we spending our resource on? Like into long trials of impeachment, crazy circus. That's a lot of public money going down the drain. And I don't know, it should be probably being put to something more important. Anyways, religious indoctrination. You guys talked, this is very important on our subject. Should parents be allowed to brainwash their kids, and how far go psychological abuse? Do you consider it a psychological abuse by your own experience, how you feared?
Yeah, I think it's psychological abuse, but I think it's too much intervention if for government to tell parents what to tell their kids. Even though I'm completely against it,
Yeah.
for parents to brainwash their kids, I think it's a really really bad idea. I think it's child abuse. I don't think it's the level of child abuse that would warrant the
Mm,
government. That would be way too much intervention for the government to monitor what the parents are telling their kids.
yeah. When it comes just to the indoctrination, what do you think about when it comes to physical abuse, like
Yeah.
mutilation or other things?
Oh
Like,
yeah, that should be criminal. That is I will support government in an ideal world, which is we're not at all close to, and I don't think it will happen in my lifetime. But in an ideal world, cutting any part of your kid's body would be illegal. It would be. I mean, technically, it is already illegal with most part of a kid's body except their genitals, right? Like if you try cutting any other parts of your child's body and you go to jail. Apparently, genitals for some reason you're allowed to cut, but no other parts of the body you're not allowed to cut. So I don't understand why the
it's so
genitals
fun,
are. Yeah.
because we talk about the sexual abuse all the time. Watch the predators, watch sexual abuse, kids being abused sexually, and but if it's religious purposes, okay.
Right. No.
Yeah, that's it.
Should be
And I
illegal
have
and
seen people
punishable,
that's
but
like freak out with vaccinations, but they are okay with the mutilations. Like it's like, oh yeah, no, the phimosis, yeah, the priest did to my kid when he was born, or they did it in the hospital, or they did in a ritualistic thing, like with the
and
I don't know,
I think
it's
there's a bit of a
crazy.
sexism here as well because this could get me in trouble. I think if you not on an individual per person level, but as a whole, I think male genital mutilation right now is a much bigger deal than female genital mutilation, and I will get
Because
in a lot
it's
of.
more common.
Hmm?
It's probably more common, no?
Yeah, because of the numbers. On an individual basis, well, if you compare one girl with one boy, female genital mutilation is a bigger deal, I think, than a male genital mutilation on average because they take out a lot more nerve endings than they do with a boy.
Oh my God.
But if you add out the total number of victims of boys compared to girls, I think not enough people. I mean, most people recognize FGM as a crime, but not that many people recognize male genital mutilation as a crime.
It is
Circumcision is also a
important to
crime,
talk.
and I think that's a bit of that's not a bit, but that's a huge sexism against
It is.
boys in that situation. I think.
Yeah, I've seen people sharing this on Twitter and some feminists coming to say like, "Oh, you're gonna start crying because they are cutting people's penis off or parts of it," and it's like it's their freedom. And I actually came in to talk about like, listen, uh, there are two things to be talked here. First is the individual rights that we have talked before. It's like I'm not my kid now since she came out of my belly. She's not part of me in any way, so I don't have rights to cut her
If
off in any
she's
way.
not
I
your
think.
property. You
Yeah,
don't.
she's
Yeah.
not my property. I'm a caregiver. It's different. So I this is the first thing. It was where like my individual finishes on my body here, so I do not have a right to subtract anything from her body is first thing I believe. And the other thing on men, it's because I think people think it's like, oh, phimosis is something that doctors do. It's like, yeah, we do when there is an indication, when there is a need. So when you're doing without a need, you are actually doing this, performing a mutilation. And that is the bad thing, because maybe your kid would need that skin later if he has some affection, if he has some problems. It could be needed to do like a surgery and reconstruct. So it's a lot to be talked on the
It's
medical issues.
it's not just about the fact that you took away something from them. It's also torture. It's
Yeah,
pure
the pain,
torture.
unnecessary pain.
It's pure torture. Like right now, as we speak, there's a lot. As we speak, there are a lot of little human beings screaming in pain. But imagine if somebody just took an adult man right now. So a van showed up, like in the middle of the street. They took a grown man, grabbed him, took him into the van, took a knife, and started torturing him with a knife on his genitals and let him go. It would be on the news. It would be on the goddamn freaking news. But you do that. Apparently, if you do that to an adult, people will be shocked. But you could do that with babies. You could torture babies with a knife with no anesthetics, and they have to explain. Are like, oh, they're not gonna remember it. Who gives a shit that they're not gonna remember it? They're experiencing pain right now. You're torturing babies.
Yeah, but
That should be a crime.
you think it, I actually think I have this belief because it's a belief. I don't know if it is. It is something that maybe we're never gonna know. I believe the phimosis on the kids. It's a type of religious technique to avoid the boys to touch their penis while they are growing, because for the penis development it is necessary that you pull the skin backwards during the shower, mainly while you're growing, so the skin can come out of the gland properly and not have the phimosis later when you try to have a sexual intercourse, and it gets messy and it hurts you. So it needs this preparation. It's something natural that the kids early as like 2 years old, when they start peeing by themselves, boys, they start noticing, and they have to stretch the skin, and it's a natural process that they do, kind of like it feels like almost like animalistic. The kids do that naturally. They are curious, of course, realizing their own body, but they feel like that is necessary, and it is. We actually teach the parents to teach the kids how to do it. No, I think that is the best way of us teaching society nowadays. It's like, because there is this, even doctors cannot have contact straight to the kids, so we teach the parents, and then the parents teach their kids how to do it. But so many people have so many problems of touching their own bodies and talk about sexuality, mainly when they are highly religious. That is like, it's just easy, cut the skin off and go over the
I
problem.
don't think most parents. Okay, so there's many different theories on why it started. One of the theories is that it was like a test of loyalty to the cult that Judaism was before it became a major religion. That they was like, but what they doing it now for? I don't think there is that much thought
Just
that goes into it.
copy,
I think people just following what they're supposed to be doing,
follow
like
traditions.
follow
Yeah,
traditions. Yeah, yeah,
that's right. Wow, great. Thank you very much. I'm
yeah.
holding for an hour 45. I'm sorry. Some people
That's
I have to say like, sorry, sorry, sorry later, because I feel like I held them too much. But
no,
yeah,
that's okay. That's fun.
was a great conversation. I loved it. There was so much more to talk, but I don't want to hold you much more. Let's try to make a next conversation in the Atheist Republic. Thank you very much for
Yeah,
inviting me to be part of it. Um,
I would
I want to
love
talk
to
about
have.
the
I want
laws don't
to.
protect people, or marry your rapist bill in Turkey. That is crazy thing. That is actually in the Bible, Christian Bible.
Yes.
A lot of Christians in Brazil don't know that. But even the Christian Bible has those passages, people, and crazy things on relationship. Like you can get married, to men can get married to as many women they can support, and a lot of people don't know their own Bibles. This is another thing we should talk to
Yeah.
because a lot of people, and I come and say like, you go to hell because of something. I don't know. Sometimes I talk about what they are using their fabric, and they're like, no, this is old book. This is not valuable anymore. Like they try to deny the old book deniers.
Right.
So it's a lot of things to talk about. Um, and I hope we have more conversations like this. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Please let people know where to find you, how to have contact, and how to
Oh,
watch all these amazing videos you guys make.
so people are gonna watch this on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So just search for Atheist Republic on YouTube. You should subscribe to our channel. On Facebook, we're also Atheist Republic. We are the biggest atheist community. On YouTube, we're not that big, but on Facebook, we're like more than 2 million. On Twitter, again, Atheist Republic. You can search for my podcast as well with Ali Rizvi. It's called Secular Jihadists. My book is on Amazon and most other booksellers. Why There's No God. You could follow me personally on Twitter or on Facebook. Just search for Armin Navabi. You could also check out our website, atheistrepublic.com. And yeah, and also, by the way, if you go to atheistrepublic.com, on most pages there's the green button where you could click on the green button and you can leave a voicemail about your views, about your story, about your opinions, about something that is happening around your area, about your fears, about your things that you like that is happening, things that about your family. Just be careful not to say anything that might put you at risk in any way. And if you record those, we have a podcast, separate podcast on Atheist Republic called Atheist Republic Voicemails. It doesn't have any host. It's just like we just play voicemails from atheists all around the world. So it's a very fun podcast. But Atheist Republic Voicemails is basically, when you listen to it, you can hear one atheist from Malaysia, and the next one from Brazil, and then one from Egypt, and one from United States, and they all have different stories. So it's just basically the voice of atheists from around the world. So
That's so
check,
beautiful.
yeah. So either you can
I will
listen
check
to,
that. I
yeah,
did not know that. This
yeah,
is
yeah.
new to me. So send me the link. So I will link it here down below. People, you guys gonna check all the links. Patreon support. How to support? Get the immersion. Make your little atheist republic. Take a picture and send to them to
Yeah.
show up on their Instagram page.
Yeah, you
A
can
lot
send
of
it.
things.
Yeah, yeah, you can send your aces. Yeah, you sent it to us. So it was very
I
nice.
did.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for
On our website, you could send us your picture with the Atheist Republic logo as well. And I also see that you're a fan of Atheism is Unstoppable. I like his content as well. It's very good. He's very
Yeah,
good.
Devon is amazing. We
Yeah.
had a long conversation. He helped my channel grow a little bit more when we had our conversation. It is so far the most famous interview, most watched interview in the
Yeah.
channel. And his Discord is amazing. I would tell you to go be part of it.
Or
His Discord channel, it's really nice. We have a lot of activities. They watch UFC together on Friday, Saturday night. Sometimes we make movie nights together. It's a lot of fun. Talk about a lot of things, politics. And also I am waiting for my Atheist Republic shirt. Guys, there is the merchant from Atheist Republic as well, hoodies and shirts. And it takes forever. I don't know, Canada, like I'm not that far from everything, but it takes forever. The post office never gets to deliver the things in time. It's ridiculous. And we do have like the private companies as well. It's not just like Brazil that is all state companies working really badly. So I don't know, but guys, go support the channel, watch the videos, be part of the super chat. It's super fun to talk to people there. They always read the comments as well. And thank you very much. And that's it. Armin Navabi, Atheist Republic and Secular Jihadists. Go check his book. There is the book on. You can buy the online version or the Amazon.
The print version.
The Amazon, the paper, the printed version.
There's an on Audible as well. There's an audio version.
Oh, I did not know. I would have listened. It would be much easier because I have so much to do around. That's nice. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and follow and
subscribe to this channel.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. I'll stop the recording.